right, good evening, everyone. We want to get started, so I'm going to settle into a spot. I see that my name is Marcus Choi, and I'm the head of schools, and we're blessed to be able to have our guest speaker. I'll do a quick introduction of her, and then I'll pray, and then we'll get started. Kaysee Cooper is a LMFT. She has an LMFT and a master's degree as well. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She and the director at the OC Counseling. She operates out of Tustin and Mission Viejo. We were just chatting a little bit. She kind of grew up in Huntington Beach and still resides there. So I know you must have made the drive all the way out here. She offers virtual sessions as well as telehealth, via telehealth as well as in person. She earned her bachelor's degree at the best university in the world, UCLA. Well done. And a master's degree in clinical psychology from Vanguard of Southern California, where we send some of our students as well. She grew up in Southern California, home of a very competitive and prestigious athletic environment. Found out that she was a soccer player growing up. And so this allowed her to find both her aspiration and ability to cope with life using the gift and environment of athletics. Some life-altering events and some stories happened where she wasn't able to pursue that through a devastating injury. But being an athlete was what really, because at that time, being an athlete was what brought consistency, identity, and community to Kaysee. Following a career-ending injury, Kaysee reframed and refocused her passion by helping herself and later others through her academic work in psychology and furthermore through her work with the UCLA Sports Psychology Lab. Coupling personal and professional experience, Kaysee learned to develop insight on the relationship between performance and passion, even within the face of suffering and setback. Following pursuing higher education, Kaysee has had experience working in the substance abuse field, inpatient, outpatient mental health with collegiate and professional athletes, and is currently working with teens, individuals, coaches, couples, families in private practice, focusing on each other's clients' individualized experience to identify and meet their diverse and specific needs. She's worked with leadership in the university setting to advocate for mental health, resulting in making progress and bridging the gap between mental health resources and the more resistant population, including student athletes. So we're just blessed to have Kaysee and to have a conversation and for her to present from her experience as an athlete. We have some head coaches here, coaches, parents, and some students, so a pretty diverse group. So I'm going to just pray for us, and then we will get started. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening, and thank you for the opportunity to hear from Ms. Kaysee Cooper and just her experience and her wisdom and her training, especially in the realm of student athletes. And help us, Lord, to have a strong and clear biblical framework for how to go about athletics, how to coach well, how to lead students, how to use it as an opportunity to mentor the students that we have. And for the students here, how to have the right mindset and approach so that they know what really it means to be successful, but that ultimately that they would enjoy their time in athletics above all things. And so bless our evening and our time together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Are very busy, especially if you are coach or parent a student athlete. You basically have no time. So I appreciate everyone being here with us this evening as we talk about really developing the mindset of a champion. As Marcus introduced, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist as well as a performance mindset coach, which is just really a lot of words to say that I sit with people. And in tonight's case, I sit with athletes on how to win the mental game, how to gain a mental edge in their sport, performance, and overall life. And the way I often describe this metaphorically is that when an individual, and again for tonight's purposes, when an athlete gets to me, they are usually in some depth of a ditch, or as I call it, and they have parents and they have coaches that are usually outside and above this well, where the grass is green and the sky is blue and the birds are chirping, and they're all puzzled and confused. And they're like, dude, get out of the well. Like, you're strong, you have the skills, here's a ladder, here's a rope. But my job is to jump in the well where it's dark and scary and oftentimes stinky, and help them unlock and unleash what is keeping them in the well. And then together we create new strategies and new skills and solutions that we use to get out of the well. So as mentioned, prior to doing Prior to being on the sidelines doing this work, I was on the other side as an athlete on the field until injury had me in my own personal well, which is where I found education at UCLA in psychology and in sports psychology. And then I've worked to couple my personal, educational, and professional experiences to create a passion that I'm just so humbled and grateful to be able to share with you all this evening. And so I have the blessing and the opportunities to work with individuals, teams, programs, coaches, athletes, artists, and performers, really in all levels of play, from the local little leagues to NCAA Division I athletes to professional athletes. And you may or may not be surprised that the patterns of problems, issues, fears, worries, and complaints presented at the lower leagues can sound incredibly similar at the highest and vice versa. However, the sooner we have access to developing the mental game, the stronger it is allowed to become. So it's never too early to hear this. It's never too early to implement some of what we're going to hear this evening. So I will warn you now, we are going to go fast, and to do so, I'm going to use the term athlete very generally to encompass all performers, but this content and information is really applicable to athletes, artists, musicians, performers of all types. And so I'm going to do my best to give you a PhD in performance psychology and how to cultivate a champion. And I'm aware, as mentioned, that there might be parents, coaches, and athletes all in this audience this evening. So my goal will be to present the information generally that can be applied through these various lenses specifically. And so I want you to leave with both principles, but also practical tools. So I will do my best to get through it fast and be happy to wrap up with any questions anyone may have at the end. So please write those down if they do come up, and I will be. All right, so what we are seeing right now in our office, on the field, is what we call burnout culture. So what we're seeing in our athletes at all levels is arguably some of the highest skill set and talent that we've ever seen than in generations and years prior, but we're also seeing the largest amount of burnout. And so we're experiencing what is being called a pandemic of burnout culture, which is actually cultivated by external expectations and pressures to these athletes. So what does this look like practically? It looks like an increase in performance anxiety. The highest performance anxiety has arguably ever been in sports culture. We're seeing premature retirement or quitting from our athletes. We're seeing athletes switching sports to try and reactivate joy long into their career. We're seeing athletes, I was just talking to Marcus about it, getting to the next level, which for many is like usually college, and we're just seeing a huge dip in performance once they hit their goal. Let's say they had a goal to be a D1 athlete, they get there, and the burnout hits them, and then we see a huge decline after they get basically to their goal. We're seeing temper tantrums both on and off the field. We're seeing performance plateaus. We're seeing performance regressions. We're seeing, this one's sometimes surprising to a lot of parents and coaches, but there's a lot of faking of injury or illness so that they can avoid their sport and performance. We're seeing kids avoid practice. We're seeing their worth based on their performance versus their character of who the Lord made them to be. We're seeing huge levels of depression and anxiety, a lack of balance or self-differentiation, meaning their identity is solely based on being an athlete. We see a decreased ability to cope, to recover, and to respond, an inability to bounce back, and a huge lack of confidence despite their skill set. And so this is kind of what burnout culture looks like practically, and ultimately what it is that the bodies are being overworked and their minds are being underdeveloped. And so we see this and it begs the question, what do we need to do about it? And I want us to look at scripture here in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 28. It reads, "Like an open city with no defenses is the man with no check on his feelings." Meaning, if you don't have the skills to deal with your feelings daily or a way to check in with your emotions as an individual, and again, in this case, an athlete, then your emotions are in control of you versus you being in control of your emotions. And this is the theme for today. As parents, as coaches, and as athletes, how do we help support the development of our young athletes emotionally and mentally? How do we help them check their feelings, like the verse says? And more importantly, how do we develop a healthy identity as a student athlete that does not result in mental health issues? And if you want to hear just one thing from me tonight, that is this: mental toughness comes from emotional wellness. Mental toughness does not come from emotional absence. Mental toughness does not come from emotional avoidance. But however, to be mentally tough, we have to be emotionally well. So how do we foster emotional wellness in our kids and athletes and performers? I want us to look at a pretty, I think, well-known example of this, which is gymnast Simone Biles in the 2021 Olympics. I know in a lot of sports, people will say, oh, they're the GOAT, right? But like when it comes to Simone Biles, there's no question. She is the greatest of all time when it comes to her sport. There's no competition, there's no question. She's changed the whole game of gymnastics. And if you go back to those 2021 Olympics, though, she was unable to perform. Not out of lack of skill, practice, or ability, but she was unable to be mentally strong due to not having a sense of control over her emotions and her mind. This example demonstrates to us that the mindset is essential at all levels of competition, regardless of skill, talent, and fame. There is no immunity to mindset. Nobody is invincible to the hidden opponent of the mind. And it is mandatory for us to evaluate, assess, and process the mind and the heart. Think of Kobe Bryant, I would say arguably one of the best athletes and champions of our time. And what was he known for? The Mamba mentality. He perfected the process of his mind, which allowed him to win the battles on the court. Unfortunately, however, what we're more likely to see is in high functioning and performing athletes is the tendency again and the pattern of the body being overworked and the mind being underdeveloped. Sometimes I joke with my athletes and I say what this looks like is the buff guy at the gym who forgets leg day, right? It's just completely unproportional and therefore inconsistent, thus being more vulnerable to weakness and to injury. So if you don't exercise a muscle, you are more prone to tearing it or hurting it. Same goes with the muscle of the mind. This is what leads to burnout, to plateaus, to temper tantrums, and to peaking. And again, those are kind of mental muscle tears. So again, we see this at all levels of the game, including the professionals. And this is an environment where each and every person competing and performing is arguably at the top of their game. But yet we see the mental battle sometimes at its highest here. Because as you continue to climb the ladder of athletics, there's much more less diversity of physical talent at the top. Everyone is good when you get to D1. Everyone is good, arguably, when you get to varsity. Everyone's good when you get to the pros. So there's less diversity of physical talent at the top. Everyone is good. But what oftentimes separates the great from the greatest comes down to the mind. The greatest variable that is inhibiting athletes from being extraordinary or great is them, namely their mindset. I get referred athletes to help them get a mental edge, to get them mentally strong, and we work just as much, if not more, on their emotional self and handling emotions like stress, fear, sadness, grief, depression, failure than we do with their mindset. Ultimately, I look at the relationship with sport, and just like any relationship, a healthy one requires the assessment of emotions. And this is where I honestly get some resistance from some athletes when I talk about the need to explore and look at the emotional component of the game in the mind. However, as we will see, it truly cannot be separated from their performance. So I want you to draw a triangle, or if you have the note handout, there is a triangle drawn for you. But I want you to draw a triangle. On each point of the triangle, we're going to write thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. And this ultimately is the model of the mind. And so it is a triangle because all three sides are connected, meaning if you move one side, it should affect the other if everything is connected. So when you move one of these, by definition, you affect the other two. And so if we're looking at our performance as athletes, aka our behavior part of this triangle, we by definition need to look at, measure, and identify what we are feeling and thinking, which are oftentimes the blind spots to athletes. Because where the mind is, the body goes. Thinking shapes our behaviors. If you want your life to go in a different direction, if you want your game to go in a different direction, you have to put your thoughts in a different direction. A quick example of this triangle in play, right, is a very familiar thought to most athletes, which is don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up. That's actually creating a feeling of anxiousness, which then The behavior is heart beating, shakiness, racy mind, poor posture, high distractibility, right? And that's how you can see how the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are quickly related. However, you come at it with, I trained for this, I'm ready for this. That's the thought. The feeling would be confidence and calmness. And the behavior is now I'm approaching with the level head, and my skill set is therefore accessible. Look at some high-level athletes. I'll take LeBron James even for an example. Look at the way he approaches the court, his behavior, the way he walks on that court, and I bet you can predict his thoughts and emotions accordingly. They are all very, very connected. So usually at this point, if I'm working with an athlete, introduce this, I ask them, what is the greatest distraction in your mind that keeps you from being a successful athlete? What gets in the way of this triangle? What interrupts this triangle? What does that pattern look like? And I have them write that down. Depending on their level of play, right? Is it school? Is it parents? Is it fans? Is it scholarships? Is it money? Is it contracts? Is it injury? Is it girls? Is it guys? Is it failure? And what we see is that the number one distraction we have found is fear, which again is an emotion. I fear striking out, of getting out, of missing, of making a mistake, of being cut, of losing playing time, of letting my team, my coaches, and my parents down. Fear is the enemy of motivation. Fear comes from a place of perfection, and perfection paralyzes potential. Perfection paralyzes performance. Let's just look at the inevitable fact of sport. Errors happen, failures happen, disappointments happen. So let's look how to respond to this rather than always try to avoid it. To maximize individual potential, we need to get mental. Therefore, we need to get out of the only performance self meaning what we're doing, and into the process self, which is how are we doing it. What we are seeing in our culture of athletes is everyone is asking them what they're doing, but nobody's asking them who are they becoming. This is the conflict of what we're gonna call process versus performance. I want you guys to hear that sports is a character formation exercise. It's a vessel in which we are developing and defining ourselves. And the biggest protective factor we are seeing from burnout culture is when athletes are being attuned to by their coaches and their parents. The biggest triggering factor we are seeing to burnout culture is parents being over-identified with their athlete's sport and performance. We want to incorporate our athletes with a process-oriented mind rather than a performance-oriented mind, and we have 5 easy steps to get that done. At different levels of sport, I would market and communicate this information differently. However, the content would essentially be exactly the same. But to make it easy for you guys to digest and then hopefully regurgitate this info, I hope to make it easy by just using an acronym. So go ahead and write down, or again, if you have the notes, the acronym is SMILE. When I'm working with like NFL players, if I told them the acronym was SMILE, they would probably laugh at me, and so we marketed a different way in that place. But again, essentially the information is all gonna be the same. So let's get to it. So this is what I want you guys to walk away with, SMILE. These are 5 steps to get into your process-oriented mind rather than only focusing on your performance. So I'll go through each of these and we'll go, again, quickly, but hopefully thoroughly. So it's gonna be choose your stance, choose your mindset, choose your inner dialogue, choose your lens, choose to externalize, SMILE, and we'll break each one down. So first, we're gonna choose our stance. We want our athletes to choose their posture. Posture actually helps you when it comes to being mentally strong. Wherever you are, you can instantly boost your confidence by changing your posture. All you have to remember is back, up, out. Shoulders back, chest out, chin up. It's the Superman pose. Stand like Superman, feel like Superman. Go back to that triangle image. Behave like Superman through your posture allows you to feel confident. Your opponents actually feel intimidated, and you get to think from a place of strength rather than deficit. When we had the chance to work with the Dallas Cowboys, they actually had someone from Princeton come out 2 times a year to talk just about posture. And it was found that in 2 minutes after changing posture, you have more serotonin and dopamine, and those are the fancy things for the happy things in your brain. So again, within 2 minutes after changing your posture, you have more serotonin and dopamine in the brain. What do your athletes' posture look like in the dugout, in a team huddle, on the sideline, on the court, on deck, after a strikeout, after an interception, in the end zone, on the field? Small changes make big differences. Start with posture, and you're already hijacking that triangle to your benefit. Next, we're gonna spend the most time on this one because it's huge. It's choose your mindset, right? That's that M, choose your mindset. One of the very, very first questions and exercise we ask and explore with our athletes is asking the question of who they are as an athlete. What is your definition of you as an athlete? I don't want your stats, your film, your position. I want to know what defines you and motivates you. I want everything to run through and be measured by this definition. And as parents, I want the feedback to be fueled through this definition. However, so many of our athletes struggle with this question because they've never been asked. And because of that, their identity becomes transactional versus transformational. Their worth becomes a factor of what they do rather than who they are. And as parents and coaches, we are one of the major mechanisms to validate or challenge that. Telling a kid, great goal, awesome at bat, amazing tackle, is highlighting and putting value on their performance self, which ultimately creates a narrative of pressure, expectation, and external validation. To be seen, to be good, to be enough, to capture mom and dad's attention is to perform to a tangible expectation. However, we need to make the change from performance to process-oriented. Rather, what is your mission statement? How do you strive to serve yourself, your sport, and your Lord? We encourage our athletes to create their definition as a place of inventory. You must name it to claim it. A definition gives you direction. I want to be a resilient, hardworking, risk-taking player. I want to be a supportive, disciplined, strategic teammate. When a scout, coach, fan looks at you, whether you are on the field or on the bench, and your best performance or your worst, what do you want them to see? And as parents specifically, this is the mechanism in which we create feedback and motivation. The lens in which we are offering support should be that of a process-oriented lens. You played with heart. You showed sportsmanship. You contributed. You displayed courage. Your effort was admirable. You came back strong after that error. We want to highlight what is in our control and difference of performance. What can we measure and take inventory of that adds to their character formation and blueprint of who they are? We should model the measurement of did I do well through the aspect of process, not performance. Because ultimately, you can perform well and still lose. You can have a great at bat and still strike out. You can have a great shot on goal and still miss. Performance is an incredibly limited lens and inventory to measure our abilities, worthiness, and confidence, yet it is the most used lens. Failure and error are inevitable. Therefore, the measure should be in spite of the inevitable, not based on the inevitable. Performance encourages a fixed mindset, whereas process supports a growth mindset. Highlight and take inventory in areas where we can grow. Measure their process rather than critique their performance. And this definition of an athlete, it becomes a filter, especially in times of failure. When we know who we are as an athlete, it allows me to recover from mistakes and mishaps quicker, because what I do is not the complete definition of who I am. Failure and error is reframed from a mark of my character to a temporary setback. When my filter is performance-based, an error has the capacity and ability to rupture my whole game. Think a golfer who becomes unrailed after one missed putt, a baseball player who can't get back on the defensive end after a poor at-bat, a goalie who lets a goal in and crumbles to every shot moving forward, a quarterback who throws a series of interceptions. I know my athletes are filtering by their performance self when they are lashing out, having temper tantrums, refusing to play or participate, and displaying the inability to bounce back. And as parents and coaches, we have to teach our athletes how to lose well. The message shouldn't be that losing is bad, that we should ignore the experience, or that we should learn to hate losing. Failure is a part of life, and the earlier that someone learns to process, learn, and grow from failure, the better. Losing well is about creating space between who you are and what you do and having multiple sources of meaning in your life. Allows you to occupy a place where, of course, you want to get better, but it's not the end of the world if you suffer defeat. In this way, you can more easily rebound and then evaluate what went wrong with a clear mind. We do our best when we are challenged, but not threatened. So don't set yourself or your kids up to be in threat mode of performance orientation. And so in this creation of our identity as an athlete, we want our why to be bigger than our what. When your identity becomes focused on the what, which is performance-based, it becomes transactional. If I play good, then I'm a good athlete. In order to be something, I have to do something. When your identity becomes focused on the why, which is process-based, it becomes transformational. Who I am becoming is more important than what I am doing. As an athlete, our identity needs to be more than what you are doing, which is vulnerable to change and inconsistency, and more defined in why you are doing it and who you are doing it. This gives us more flexibility in measuring ourselves as athletes as well. Again, performance versus process. Measuring only by performance misses so much of the picture and is not an accurate depiction, and again, is fragile. If my identity is circled around being a good quarterback and throwing good passes, then when I inevitably throw a poor pass or am sacked or am intercepted, my identity crumbles in that moment. If my identity is circled around being a confident, risk-taking leader, then I respond to the interception by getting back into the huddle with a loud voice, strong posture, and I call the next play. I work with my athletes to create their own scoring card of how they measure success by focusing on the process over the performance. Instead of measuring their game by stats, they are to measure their game by their mindset. Did they show up with confidence? Did they show leadership? Did they recover after failure? We work together to create their individual scorecard and reframe success and failure. Who are you as an athlete on the bench? Who are you as an athlete in the locker room, at practice, in the team group chat, in the classroom? Why do you play? Is it to connect with others? Is it to learn to compete against yourself, to be of something greater than you? To learn to sacrifice and out-sacrifice others, to learn to outsweat my competition? All of these things are what lead you to be great students, leaders, businessmen, businesswomen, spouses, and parents one day. Your identity as an athlete, when defined by your why and not your what, encompasses far beyond the field. Sports is a vessel for your future selves. It is my hope that everyone in here is, or parents, or coaches, the next Mike Trout, Caitlin Clark, or Scotty Scheffler, but statistically speaking, that just isn't likely. However, can we also be mindful of how this vessel of sports can affect their future selves and how they show up in competition, in work, in stress while moving forward? To be great, you have to do more than just play great. You have to practice, think, prepare, rest, lead, and pray greatly, not just perform greatly. Great performance comes from a great process. As coaches, are you enforcing the performance or the process? As parents, are you encouraging the performance or the process? And as athletes, are you celebrating the performance or the process? Next, we're going to skip over to the I, which is choose your inner dialogue. This is all about self-talk here. Are you an athlete that blames, complains? This is all about self-talk. Poor self-talk equals no more can't, won't, and don't. No more I can't, I won't, or I don't. What happens same thing happens when we think don't miss, don't strike out. We must think in I can, I will, it is like me too. Because you can't think of two things at once, meaning I cannot hold I can't miss with I can hit simultaneously. Pick one. This is how we manufacture confidence. I encourage my athletes to, instead of fear failure with the words can't, won't, or don't, to become experts in recovering from failure or error. It is like me to recover by the time I am back in the dugout. I can get back out on the field. I will contribute to my team with a positive attitude. Breathe in confidence, breathe out anxiety. When we use words like I can't, I won't, I don't, that kind of language, we are creating fear and anxiety, which promotes avoidance behaviors. When we use the language I can, I will, I believe, we are creating confidence, which promotes approaching behaviors. Show me a kid approaching burnout, and I can promise you an inner dialogue filled with can't, won't, don't. I was working with a golfer on tour, and those of you who play golf or participate in golf know how difficult it is and how much you really have to practice recovering from air. But he would approach every single putt. Don't miss this. You can't miss this. And he was misunderstanding motivation and fear. He was approaching the ball with a fear-based mindset, which was actually triggering an anxious and very desperate approach that resulted in a missed shot. When he corrected his self-talk to, it is like me to make this putt, I'm successful at putting, he approached the ball with confidence and practiced mindset, which triggered a much more successful approach. Research has even shown that changing I think to I believe has shown improvements in performance due to the added confidence. So again, the I, choose your inner dialogue, it's all about self-talk. You hear one thing here, no more I can't, I won't, I don't. It needs to be more I can, I will, I believe, it is like me to, ... fill in the sentence. Moving along, hopefully quickly here. L is going to be choose your lens. Just like we can control what we choose to think, we can control what we choose to see. This step is about visualizing the reality you want to see. We have our athletes take time each day in a quiet room and with their eyes closed for 5 minutes. During this time, we ask them to envision themselves doing and accomplishing what you want in practice or in competition or the game. What this does is it makes things controllable, changeable, and explainable. We want them to focus on the details of the sights, the sounds, the smells, and the touch of performing. When you vividly visualize an action or performance, neural pathways in the brain are literally being created and strengthened. So the brain does not differentiate between these visualizations and actual memories, meaning when you visualize them, the neural pathways are strengthened the same way as if they happened. So this creates muscle memory, and I want you guys to realize that that works both positively and negatively. So oftentimes, right, we want to do visualization, which is positively creating neural pathways, closing our mind, imagining ourselves in competition. And what we realize is so many athletes are actually doing negative visualization without realizing it because they're replaying their error time and time again from the game, from the practice, whatever it may be. Every time they're replaying that error, they're strengthening that neural pathway. So choose what neural pathways you want to have strengthened in your own brain. Start seeing in your mind things going the way you want, and the chances of them becoming about are astronomically higher. So again, choose your lens. This is all about the step of visualization. And the last step of the SMILE acronym is choose to externalize. Champions journal their goals, their picture, their emotions, their mindset, and their progress daily. Taking these thoughts and goals out of your mind and putting them on paper makes all the difference. We want to go from a monologue to a dialogue. We go from a conversation with ourselves to a conversation with another. It's a process of externalizing. But you can't manage what you don't measure. So externalizing what's going on inside helps you to gain control of your mental life. You must, again, claim it to tame it, because you cannot afford to ignore the process of your progress. Journaling is an exercise that most of us know what it means, but some of us may not know what it actually looks like. And I will not torture you the same way I was tortured in starting my journaling process. So we have actually outlined a prompt for you athletes and parents and coaches to all use daily. What we call is the daily reset, where we have our athletes spend 1% of their day. If you do the math, 1% of your day comes down to 14 minutes. Spending 1% of your day, 14 minutes, working on your mindset through journaling and visualization. So what this looks like is, again, the daily reset. It starts with a self-evaluation from 1 to 10. Again, checking in. Mental toughness comes from emotional wellness. Measure your emotions. Self-evaluation from 1 to 10. Then we have them write 3 things they're grateful for. It's a 3, 2, 1. 3 things you're grateful for, 2 things you're excited about, 1 thing you want to accomplish. Then we have them practice visualization, and then they spend the rest of the time in prayer or journaling. So ideally what we want to see in this 14 minutes is 9 minutes of journaling, starting with the 3, 2, 1, and then it's a free journal, and then we have 5 minutes of the visualization. That's spending 1% of their day, 14 minutes working on their mindset. And when they tell me that they don't have 14 minutes in their day, I already know they're closer to burnout than they want to realize. If you don't have 14 minutes to work on your mindset, we have to look at how to create margins to do so. So why is this important? It teaches you to prioritize what defines you. Learning how to assess our emotions accurately and honestly on any given day is a valuable lesson and life skill that creates self-awareness. Again, mental toughness comes from emotional wellness. Each day, start by identifying your emotional state. We ask that if you score less than 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, to share that with a healthy adult or coach. You then will train your mind to begin each day from a place of abundance and gratitude. It takes daily practice to see things we may otherwise overlook. We can be grateful for big or small things. We can be looking forward to retirement or tomorrow. We can be wanting to accomplish big or small goals. But what we're doing is we're actually training our brain to find gratitude, excitement, and confidence rather than anxiety. With this exercise, we're priming the brain every day. So it uses muscle memory over time to assess our environment naturally in this way to challenge a fearful deficit mindset. And this may sound simple, and that's because it is. But it's the simple things that, when looked over time, have really big effects. Common knowledge does not always mean common practice. Sometimes with my athletes, I tell them when they're like, oh, what's this gonna do? This is just something else to do, and roll their eyes, it's just 14 minutes. I give them an example of flossing, right? It's something that takes 2 minutes to do, but we're so eager to get to bed, to catch the last 5 minutes of a show, or a rundown from the day, and we're quick to pass it up. But it's that 2-minute habit over time that separates disease from health. Our mind works the same way. Our expectation for our athletes is that they complete this daily. A daily routine is very important in the development of your performance mindset. Routine primes confidence and success. Routine resets the mindset. So set it and stick with it. Journaling using our daily reset technique, if this is the technique that you guys want to use, which we recommend, and it was based in research in our studies. So this is actually available for you online at the www.theresetgroup.com, or you can always contact me directly with any questions. But again, we have these performance mindset journals ready for you so that we did the hard work for you. Again, that is called the Daily Reset at theresetgroup.com. So ultimately, what I hope you all can hear today is that when executing these skills, it's much more than just the game of sports, but how we're training ourselves and our kids for life. Eventually, when the cleats get hung up, there will still be the need to operate stressful situations, the temptation to compare yourself to others, and the tendency to battle with success versus failure. By implementing these foundational skills, now we are working to prevent burnout and promote healthiness in more than just your athletic self, but your whole self. We are seeing burnout at higher levels than ever before, and one of the biggest predictors of burnout is an athlete's relationship with self-care and mindset. So I hope you all can partner with me in creating healthy habits, healthy athletes, and healthy minds, both physically and emotionally. We have to choose to have more trusting moments than teaching moments in supporting our athletes. So I will wrap up with this story. Kobe Bryant repeatedly had said that when he won his 6th NBA title, then he would be satisfied and retire. And Kobe wasn't the only one who has fallen for this trap. Every day, people everywhere live their lives believing everything will be different if they can just achieve more, win more, or make more money. But if achievement hasn't filled that void to date, how is achieving more going to fill it in the future? Like thirsty people guzzling salt water. Achievement only creates a greater desire for accomplishing more, dehydrating us of true satisfaction and fulfillment. After Andre Agassi made it to #1 in the world in tennis, he said, "I thought that getting to #1 was going to be the moment I made sense of my life, but it left me a little empty and I spiraled down." Ultimately, the scorecard society judges us by is tragically flawed, and pursuing it will leave our kids feeling unfulfilled. It's time we develop a new scorecard of how we define a truly successful life. Help your kids think about a few people they admire and identify what characteristics they embody that they would like to be known for. They now have their new scorecard, and one for you to help them keep themselves accountable to and for. thank you for your time and attention this evening. I know we went through a lot and we went fast. However, there's just so much to explore and consider when we think about the psychology of performance. I know this evening's topic has been surrounded by athletes and performance. However, at OC Counseling, which you guys do have my contact information, we not only cater to athletes, but also individuals, kids, teens, young adults, families, marriages, and helping take inventory of the heart and mind and providing skills, strategies, and solutions to get someone closer to living to their personalized scorecard. So I will leave my info up here for anyone that may find it helpful. And please do not hesitate to reach out, whether it's to connect or to have a question, anything like that. I'm an open book, and I love to get this information out here. So thank you again for your time and your efforts. You are already part of the solution by just showing up here tonight. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening, and stay tuned for more.